these imperfections influence everything that humans say, do, and experience. In The Idiot Brain, Dean Burnett celebrates the downright laughable things our minds do to us and exposes the fact that people are often way off in their thinking about how the brain works. Okay. Let's take a look. What did that say? Dedicated to every human with a brain. It's not an easy thing to put up with. So well done. Okay, we'll skip through the introduction. And we'll go straight to Mind Controls, Chapter 1. How the brain regulates the body and usually makes a mess of things. Okay, let's get started here. The mechanics that allow us to think and reason and contemplate didn't exist millions of years ago. The first fish to crawl onto land eons ago wasn't racked with self-doubt, thinking, why am I doing this? I can't breathe up here and I don't even have any legs, whatever those are. This is the last time I play Truth or Dare with Gary. No. Until relatively recently, the brain had a much more clear and simple purpose, keeping the body alive by any means necessary. The primitive human brain was obviously successful because we as a species endured and are now the dominant life form on Earth. Yay us. But despite our evolved, complicated cognitive abilities, the original primitive brain functions didn't go away. If anything, they became more important. Having language and reasoning skills doesn't really amount to much if you keep dying from simple things like forgetting to eat or wandering off cliffs. The brain needs the body to sustain it, and the body needs the brain to control it and make it do necessary things. They're actually far more intertwined than this description suggests, but just go with it for now. As a result, much of the brain is dedicated to basic physiological processes, monitoring internal workings, coordinating responses to problems, cleaning up mess, maintenance essentially. The regions that control these fundamental aspects, the brainstem and cerebellum, are sometimes referred to as the reptile brain, emphasizing their primitive nature because it's the same thing the brain was doing back when we were reptiles, back in the mists of time. By contrast, all the more advanced abilities we modern humans enjoy, consciousness, attention, perception, and reasoning, are found in the neocortex. Neo means new. The actual arrangement is far more complex than these labels suggest, but it's a useful shorthand. So you might hope that these parts, the reptile brain and neocortex, would work together harmoniously, or at least ignore each other. Some hope. If you've ever worked for someone who's a micromanager, you know how incredibly inefficient this arrangement can be. Having someone less experienced but technically higher ranking hovering over you, issuing ill-informed orders and asking dumb questions can really only make it harder. The neocortex does this with the reptile brain all the time. It's not all one way though. The neocortex is flexible and responsive, while the reptile brain is set in its ways. We've all met people who think they know best because they're older or have been doing something for longer. Working with these people can be a nightmare, like trying to write computer programs with looks at how the brain messes up the more basic functions of our body. Stop the book. I want to get off. How the brain causes motion sickness. Modern humans spend a lot more time sitting down than ever before. Manual labor jobs have largely been replaced by office jobs. Cars and other means of transport mean we can travel while sitting down, and the internet makes it possible to spend practically your whole life sitting down, what with telecommuting, online banking, and shopping. This has its downsides. Obscene sums are spent on ergonomically designed office chairs to make sure people don't get damaged or injured due to excessive sitting. Sitting too long on an airplane can even be fatal due to deep vein thrombosis. It seems odd, but very little movement is damaging. Because moving is important. Humans are good at it, and we do it a lot, as evidenced by the fact that as a species we've pretty much covered the surface of the Earth and actually been to the moon. Walking 2 miles a day has been reported as being good for the brain, but then it's probably good for every part of the body. Our skeletons have evolved to allow long periods of walking. But it's not just the structure of our bodies. We're seemingly programmed to walk without even getting the brain involved. There are nerve clusters in our spines that help control our locomotion without any conscious involvement. These bundles of nerves are called pattern generators and are found in the lower parts of the spinal cord in the central nervous system. These pattern generators stimulate the muscles and tendons of the legs to move in specific patterns. Okay, well, we kind of know a lot of that. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit and explain to me about the motion sickness. Here's the question. If moving is integral to our well-being and survival, and we've actually evolved sophisticated biological systems to ensure it happens as often and easily as possible, why does it sometimes make us throw up? This is the phenomenon known as motion sickness or travel sickness. Sometimes, being in transit makes us bring up our breakfast, lose our lunch, or eject some other more recent but non-alliterative meal. It's the brain that's actually responsible for this, not the stomach. What possible reason could there be for our brains to conclude, in defiance of eons of evolution, that going from point A to point B is a legitimate cause for vomiting? In actual fact, the brain isn't defying our evolved tendencies at all. It's the numerous systems and mechanisms we have to facilitate motion that are causing the problem. Motion sickness only occurs when you are traveling by artificial means in a vehicle. Okay. Humans have a sophisticated array of senses and neurological mechanisms that give rise to proprioception, the ability to sense how our body is currently arranged and which parts are going where. Put your hand behind your back, and you can still sense the hand. You know where it is and what rude gesture it's making without actually seeing it. That's proprioception. There's also the vestibular system found in our inner ear. It's a bunch of fluid-filled canals, meaning bony tubes in this context, to detect our balance and position. There's enough space in there for fluid to move in response to gravity, and there are neurons throughout it that can detect the location and arrangement of the fluids, letting our brain know our current position and orientation. If the fluid is at the top of the tubes, that means we are upside down, which probably isn't ideal. Human motion, walking, running, crawling, hopping, produces a very specific set of signals. There's the steady up and down rocking motion inherent in bipedal walking. The general velocity and the external forces such as the movement of air passing you and your shifting internal fluids that this produces. All of these are detected proprioception and the vestibular system. The image hitting our eyes is one of the outside world going by. The same image could be caused by us moving past or by us staying still on the outside world going past. At the most basic level, both are valid interpretations. How does the brain know which is right? It receives the visual information, couples it with information from the fluid system in the ear, and concludes, body is moving, this is normal, and then goes back to thinking about sex or revenge or Pokemon, whatever it is you're into. Our eyes and inner systems work together to explain what's going on. Movement via a vehicle produces a different set of sensations. Cars don't have that signature rhythmical rocking motion that our bodies associate with walking, unless your suspension is shot, and the same usually goes for planes, trains, and ships. When you're being transported, you're not the one actually doing the moving, you're just sitting there doing something to pass the time, such as trying to stop yourself from throwing up. Your proprioception isn't producing all those clever signals for the brain to comprehend what's going on. No signals means you're not doing anything to the reptile brain, and this is reinforced by your eyes telling you you're not moving. But you actually are moving, and the aforementioned fluids in your ear are responding to the forces caused by high-speed movement and acceleration, sending signals to the brain that are saying you are traveling, and quite fast. So now the brain is getting mixed signals from a precisely calibrated motion detection system, and it is believed that this is what causes motion sickness. Well, yeah, okay. Skip ahead a little bit. We're going to look at Chapter 2, The Gift of Memory. Keep the receipt. The human memory system and its strange features. The word memory is often heard these days, but in the technological sense. Computer memory is an important concept that we all understand, a storage space for information, phone memory, iPod memory, even a USB flash drive is referred to as a memory stick. There's not much simpler than a stick, so you could forgive people for thinking that computer memory and human memory are roughly the same in terms of how they work. Information goes in, the brain records it, and you access it when you need it, right? Wrong. Data and info are put into the memory of a computer where they remain until needed, at which point they are retrieved, barring some technical fault, in exactly the same state in which they were first stored. So far, so logical. But imagine a computer that decided some information in its memory was more important than other information, for reasons that were never made clear. Or a computer that filed information in a manner that didn't make any logical sense, meaning you had to search through random folders and drives trying to find the most basic data. Or a computer that kept opening your more personal and embarrassing files, like the ones containing all your erotic Care Bears fan fiction, without being asked at random times. Or a computer that decided it didn't really like the information you've stored, so altered it for you to suit its preferences. Imagine a computer that did all of these things all of the time. Such a device would be flung out of your office window less than half an hour after being switched on. But your brain does all these things with your memory, and all the time. Whereas with computers, you can buy a newer model or take a malfunctioning one back to the shop. We're basically stuck with our brain. You can't even turn it off and on again to reboot the system. Sleep doesn't count. This is just one example of why the brain is like a computer, is something you should say to many modern neuroscientists if you enjoy watching people twitch due to barely suppressed frustration. That is because it is a very misleading and simplistic comparison, and the memory system is a perfect illustration. illustration of this. This chapter looks at some of the more baffling and intriguing properties of the brain's memory system. I would have described them as memorable, but there's no way to guarantee that given how convoluted the memory system can be. Why did I just come in here? The divide between long-term and short-term memory. We've all done it at some time or another. You're doing something in one room when it suddenly occurs to you that you need to go to a different room to get something. Along the way, something distracts you. A tune on the radio, someone saying something amusing as you pass, or suddenly figuring out a plot twist in a TV show that's been bugging you for months. Whatever it is, you reach your destination and suddenly have no idea why you decided to go there. It's frustrating. It's annoying. It's time-wasting. It's one of the many quirks thrown up by the surprisingly complex way the brain processes memory. The most familiar division in human memory for most people is that between short-term and long-term memory. These differ considerably, but are still interdependent. Short-term memories last about a minute max, whereas long-term memories can and do stay with you your whole life. Anyone referring to something they recall from a day or even a few hours ago as short-term memory is incorrect. That is long-term memory. Short-term memory doesn't last long, but it deals with actual conscious manipulation of information, the things we are currently thinking about, in essence. We can think about them because they're in our short-term memory. That's what it's for. Long-term memory provides copious data to aid our thinking, but it's short-term memory that actually does the thinking. For this reason, some neuroscientists prefer to say working memory instead of short-term memory. It will surprise many to find that the capacity of short-term memory is so small. Current research suggests the average short-term memory can hold a maximum of 4 items at one time. If someone is given a list of words to remember, they should be able to remember only 4 words. This is based on numerous experiments where people were made to recall words or items from a previously shown list and on average, could recall only 4 with any certainty. For many years, the capacity was believed to be 7 plus or minus 2. This was labeled as the magic number or Miller's Law, derived from 1950s experiments by George Miller. However, refinements and reassessment of legitimate recall and experimental methods have since provided data to show the actual capacity is more like 4 items. Humans have developed strategies to get around limited and short-term memory capacity and maximize available storage space. One of these is a process called chunking, where a person groups these things together in a single item or chunk to better utilize their short-term memory capacity. If you were asked to remember the words smells, mom, cheese, of, and your, that would be 5 items. However, if you were asked to remember the phrase, your mom smells of cheese, that would be 1 item and a possible fight with the experimenter. In contrast, we don't know the upper limit of the long-term memory capacity as nobody has lived long enough to fill it, but it's obscenely capacious. So why is short-term memory so restricted? Well, partly because it's constantly in use. We're experiencing and thinking about things at every waking moment, and some sleeping ones, which means information is coming and going at an alarmingly speedy rate. This isn't somewhere that's going to lend itself well to long-term storage, which requires stability and order. It would be like leaving all of your boxes and files in the entrance of a busy airport. Another factor is that short-term memories don't have a physical basis. Short-term memories are stored in specific patterns of activity in neurons. To clarify, logical processor capable of receiving and generating information in the form of electrical activity across cell membranes that give it structure, as well as forming complex connections with other neurons. So short-term memory is based on neuronal activity in the dedicated regions responsible, such as the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex and the frontal lobe. We know from brain scanning that a lot of the more sophisticated thinking stuff goes on in the frontal lobe. Storing information in patterns of neuronal activity is a bit tricky. It's like writing a shopping list in the foam on your cappuccino. It's technically possible, as the foam will retain the shapes of words for a few moments, but it's not got any longevity, and hence can't be used for storage in any practical sense. Short-term memory is for rapid processing and manipulation, and with the constant influx of information, anything unimportant is ignored and quickly overwritten or allowed to fade away. This isn't a foolproof system. Quite often, important stuff gets bumped out of short-term memory before it can be properly dealt with, which can lead to the "why did I just come in here" scenario. Also, short-term memory can become overtaxed, unable to focus on anything specific while being bombarded with new information and demands. Ever seen someone, amid some hubbub, with everyone clamoring to be heard, suddenly declare, "I can't think with all this going on"? Short-term memory isn't equipped to cope with that workload. Obvious question. If the short-term memory where we do our thinking has such a small capacity, how the hell do we get anything done? Why aren't we all sitting around trying and failing to count the fingers on one hand? Luckily, short-term memory is linked into long-term memory, which takes a lot of pressure off. Take a professional translator, someone listening to a long, detailed speech in one language and translating it into another in real time. Surely this should be more than short-term memory can cope with, but actually it isn't. If you were asking someone to translate a language in real time while learning the language, then yes, that would be a big ask. But for the translator, the words and structure of the languages are already stored in long-term memory. The brain even has regions specifically dedicated to language, like Broca's and Wernicke's areas, as we'll see later. Short-term memory has to deal with the order of the words and meaning of the sentences, but this is something it can do, especially with practice. And the short-term, long-term interaction is the same for everyone. You don't have to learn what a sandwich is every time you want a sandwich, but you can forget that you wanted one by the time you get to the kitchen. There are several ways information can end up as long-term memory. At a conscious level, we can ensure that short-term memories end up as long-term memories by rehearsing the relevant information, such as the phone number of someone important. We repeat it to ourselves to ensure we remember it. This is necessary because rather than patterns of brief activity like short-term memories, long-term memories are based on new connections between neurons, supported by synapses, formation of which can be spurred on doing something like repeating specific things you want to remember. Neurons conduct signals known as action potentials along their length in order to transmit information from the body to the brain, or vice versa, like electricity along a surprisingly squidgy cable. Typically, many neurons in a chain make up a nerve and conduct signals from one point to another, so signals have to travel from one neuron to the next in order to get anywhere. The link between two or more neurons is a synapse. It is not a direct physical connection, it is just a very narrow gap between the end of one neuron and the beginning of another. Although many neurons have multiple beginning and end points just to keep things across the synapse and interact with the membrane of the other neuron via receptors. Once a neurotransmitter interacts with a receptor, it induces another action potential in this neuron, which travels along to the next synapse and so on. There are many different types of neurotransmitters, as we'll see later. They underpin practically all activity of the brain, and each type of neurotransmitter has specific roles and functions. They also have specific receptors that recognize and interact with them, much like security doors that will only open if presented with the right key, password, fingerprint, or retinal scan. Synapses are believed to be where the real information is held in the brain, just as a certain sequence of ones and zeros on a hard drive represents a specific file, so a specific collection of synapses in a specific place represents a memory, which we experience when these synapses are activated. So these synapses are the physical form for specific memories, just like certain patterns of ink on paper become words that make sense in a language you recognize when a specific synapse or several synapses become active. The brain interprets this as a memory. This creation of new long-term memories by forming these synapses is called encoding. The process where memory is actually stored in the brain. Encoding is something the brain can do fairly quickly, but not immediately. Hence, short-term memory relies on less permanent but more rapid patterns of activity to store information. It doesn't form new synapses, it just triggers a bunch of essentially multi-purpose ones. Rehearsing something in short-term memory keeps it active long enough to keep the long-term memory time to record it. Rehearsing something in short-term memory keeps it active long enough to give the long-term memory time to encode it. There's strong evidence to suggest that nearly everything we experience is stored in long-term memory in some form. All of the information from our senses and the associated emotional and cognitive aspects is relayed to the hippocampus and the temporal lobe. The hippocampus is a highly active brain region that is constantly combining the never-ending streams of sensory information into individual memories. According to a great wealth of experimental evidence, the hippocampus is the place that the actual encoding happens. People with a damaged hippocampus can't seem to encode new memories. Those who have constantly to learn and remember new information have surprisingly large hippocampi, like taxi drivers having enlarged hippocampal regions that process spatial memory and navigation. Okay, so that is true, but now, in this day and age, we have GPS, so maybe it's not true anymore. But there is a really famous study of taxi drivers, and it was somewhere, I want to say in England, where they just had this really complicated infrastructure of roads, and you had to know so much of the ins and outs and pass a really rigorous test to be a cab driver there. And the brain scans of these cab drivers did show actual changes in the brain, specifically in the hippocampus. But that's not written in this book. The author just referenced it, so I wanted to elaborate a little bit. That was something I learned in grad school, so I just thought I'd share it. Okay, so where were we? New memories are laid down by the hippocampus and slowly move out into the cortex as new memories form behind them, gradually nudging them along. This gradual reinforcing and shoring up of encoded memories is known as consolidation. So the short-term memory approach of repeating something until it's remembered isn't essential for making long-term memories, but it's often crucial for making sure that a specific arrangement of information is encoded. say, a phone number. This is just a sequence of numbers that are already in the long-term memory, but you need to encode it again by repeating the phone number to flag up that this particular sequence of numbers is important and requires a dedicated memory to be retained long-term. The repetition is the short-term memory equivalent of taking a bit of information, sticking it on a label marked urgent, and then sending it into the filing team. Cool. So, if long-term memory remembers everything, how do we still end up forgetting things? Good question. The general consensus is that forgotten long-term memories are still technically there in the brain, barring some trauma in which they're physically destroyed, at which point being able to remember a friend's birthday will not seem so important. But long-term memories have to go through 3 stages in order to be useful. They need to be made or encoded. They need to be effectively stored in the hippocampus and then the cortex, and then they need to be retrieved. So, encoding, storage, and retrieval. If you can't retrieve a memory, it's as good as not being there at all. It's like when you can't find your gloves. You've still got gloves. They still exist, but you've got cold hands anyway. Some memories are easily retrieved because they are more salient. For example, memories for something with a great degree of emotional attachment, such as your wedding day, or your first kiss, or that time you got 2 bags of chips out of the vending machine when you only paid for 1, are usually very easily recalled. As well as the event itself, there's all the emotion and thoughts and sensations going on at the same time. All of these create more and more links in the brain to this specific memory, which means the aforementioned consolidation process attaches a lot more importance to it and a lot more links to it, making it easier to retrieve. In contrast, memories with minimal or no important associations, for instance, your 473rd uneventful commute to work, they get the bare minimum of consolidation, so they're a lot harder to retrieve. The brain even uses this as something of a survival strategy. Victims of traumatic events often end up suffering from flashbulb memories, where the memory of the car accident or the gruesome crime or whatever happened is vivid and it keeps recurring long after the event. Because the sensations at the time of the trauma were so intense, with the brain and body flooded with adrenaline causing heightened senses and awareness, the memory lodges powerfully and remains raw and visceral. It's as if the brain took stock of the awful things happening and said, "This right here, this is awful, do not forget this, we do not want to have to go through this again." The trouble is that the memory can be so vivid that it becomes disruptive. But no memory is formed in isolation. So even in more mundane scenarios, the context in which the memory was acquired can also be used as a trigger to help retrieve it, as some studies have revealed. In one example, scientists got 2 groups of subjects to learn some information. One group learned it in a standard room. The other group learned it while underwater wearing full scuba suits. They were later tested on the information they were told to learn, either in the same situation or the alternative one. Those who studied and were tested in the same situation performed significantly better than those who studied and were tested at different ones. Those who studied underwater and did the test underwater got much better scores than those who studied underwater but did the test in a normal room. Being underwater has nothing to do with the information being learned, but it was the context in which the information was learned, and this is a big help in accessing memory. Much of the memory for where information is learned involves the context at the time. So putting someone in the same context essentially activates part of the memory, making it easier to retrieve it, like revealing several letters in a game of hangman. At this point, it's important to point out that memories for things that happen to us are not the only types of memories. episodic memories, or autobiographical memories, which should be self-explanatory. But we also have semantic memories, which are for information essentially without the context. You remember light travels faster than sound, but not the specific physics lesson where you learned this. Remembering that the capital of France is Paris is a semantic memory. Remembering the time you got sick at the Eiffel Tower is an episodic memory. And these are the long-term memories we're consciously aware of. There's a whole swath of long-term memories that we don't need to be aware of, like abilities we have without thinking about it, like driving a car or riding a bike. These are procedural memories, and we won't go into them any further because then you'll start thinking about them, and that might make it harder to use them. In summary, short-term memory is fast, manipulative, and fleeting, whereas long-term memory is persistent, enduring, and capacious. This is why a funny thing that happened while in school can be something you remember forever, and yet still decide to go into a room, but if distracted even slightly, forget why by the time you get there. I think this is a good place to pause. So that was the excerpt from The Idiot Brain by Dean Burnett. This was my first time reading it. It was alright. I did study neuroplasticity in grad school, so a lot of this wasn't really new information for me. But I think it's cool. It was a nice refresher, and it did put it in a way that is easier to understand than reading a textbook. And it was a nice refresher, I guess, for me. It's been a while. And if you didn't find it interesting,